Welcome, beautiful souls, to Witnesses to Happiness. Let's dive right into this explainer and gently explore a great divide that honestly plagues so many dedicated seekers in cartomancy. It's a tension you've likely felt right in your own hands as you shuffle your deck. It's that pull between the strict traditional guidebook meanings and your own deeply personal, intuitive gut feeling, right? We constantly wonder, are we supposed to memorize these ancient texts word for word, or are we supposed to just feel the energy of the imagery? Well, today, we are going to completely dissolve that anxiety. We're going to see exactly how tarot is a profound tool for your own self-discovery and not just mere fortune-telling. Take a deep breath with me. Just let your shoulders drop, center your spirit, and ask yourself this profound question as we prepare to transform how you connect with your deck. The cards speak. Are you listening? Are you truly hearing their ancient wisdom, or are you maybe just hearing the echoes of your own immediate desires? For our beautiful journey today, we'll gently step through four key areas: our roots, our wings, bridging the two, and finally, deepening your daily practice. So let's ground ourselves in part one, the roots, meaning and tradition. Traditional meanings aren't these rigid cages meant to restrict your spirit. Not at all. They are centuries of objectified human experience acting as our spiritual grounding. Think of the beautiful Three of Cups. A traditionalist doesn't just look at this card and intuitively see a group of women celebrating at a party. Because they have studied the roots, they see a precise, magnificent data packet. They immediately see the water elements, representing the unconscious and our relationships. They see the numerological synthesis of the number 3, thesis, antithesis, and finally stability. And they even see the astrological correspondence of Mercury in Cancer, bringing emotional communication. The traditional meaning acts as a loving cognitive guardrail. It ensures we actually receive the objective archetype of the card, rather than just reading our own passing mood into it. And this brilliantly illustrates why different decks simply need different roots. Tarot is built on grand archetypes and myth, which allows for this expansive psychological reflection and deep therapeutic insight. But a system like the Lenormand, that functions entirely differently. Lenormand operates with the strictness of a linguistic grammar. It's incredibly functional, event-oriented, and it relies on combinations that act almost like mathematical equations. In a highly structural system like Lenormand, the traditional meanings are even more uncompromising. Symbols like the fox for deceit or the coffin for endings, well, they can't simply be reimagined intuitively just because you happen to feel positive that day or, because you happen to love foxes. As the traditional saying goes, a coffin is a coffin is a coffin. Ignoring these historical roots risks completely reversing the message and confusing your spirit. Which brings us to part two, the wings. Let's look at the actual science of our intuition. It's time to demystify intuition a bit. Let's move it away from the idea of pure, unexplainable magic and ground it in cognitive psychology. True intuition is actually just your brain's implicit memory working in absolute milliseconds. Think of a chess grandmaster. They don't magically guess the right move, right? Instead, they intuitively draw from a vast internalized database of thousands of patterns they've studied over the years. True intuitive card reading is exactly the same thing. You cannot deeply intuit the cards without first giving your subconscious those rich symbols and patterns to draw from. True intuition requires competence. It might feel a little surprising to apply behavioral economics to our mystical cards, but using Daniel Kahneman's famous cognitive theory of dual processes, we can perfectly map out our tarot journey. We see that learning the cards begins in System 2. That's the slow, analytical, and sometimes exhausting process of looking up book knowledge. But through loving, patient practice, that knowledge drops down into your subconscious. It blossoms into System 1, the fast, automatic, effortless flow of intuition, meaning literally transforms into intuition over time. But we really must be careful here, dear ones, because relying solely on your feelings without grounding them in our roots can lead to projection, which psychologists call the Rorschach effect. For instance, imagine drawing the Tower card in a love reading. Because you are deeply afraid of painful conflict and desperately want a happy ending, you might force an intuitive reading of a joyful breakthrough. You project your desires right onto the card, completely ignoring its systemic warning of collapsing false structures. The book meaning is there to act as a loving corrective to our own personal biases. A skilled, trustworthy mentor also learns to distinguish between true systemic messages and simple, cold-reading empathy. If a client sits down with you looking utterly exhausted and you draw the Four of Swords, you have to ask yourself, am I reading the systemic demand for a spiritual rest period dictated by the actual card, or am I merely noticing my client has dark circles under their eyes? Both are beautiful forms of empathy, but true card reading requires that we listen to the system. Let's flow right into part 3, the bridge. This is where the synthesis and the real magic happen. This is where we dissolve the anxiety of this great debate entirely. I want you to think of learning the cards just like learning a brand new language. The traditional meanings, the guidebooks, the astrological links, these are your vocabulary words and your grammar. You must intimately know the words of a language before your soul can fluidly and intuitively improvise its poetry. If you only memorize the dictionary, your readings will sound robotic and cold. But if you only use feeling without any vocabulary, your readings will be completely ungrounded. You absolutely need both to speak fluently. Intuition is what actually bridges the gap between the rigid book and the living, breathing human being sitting in front of you. Imagine a client asking about a modern tech startup and you draw the Six of Cups. While the traditional meaning of childhood nostalgia doesn't quite fit logically, does it? But your intuition steps in, abstracts the core feeling of that card, and translates it for the moment. Your inner voice bridges the gap, interpreting the card as finding a safe, familiar working environment, or reconnecting with old colleagues. Your intuition selects the absolute perfect nuance for the present moment. Please understand that your relationship with the cards is a living timeline. Your journey naturally evolves from being an apprentice, where you really must rely heavily on structure to avoid getting lost in your own ego. Then you move to an intermediate stage, where meaning and intuition begin to dance as true equals. And finally, you blossom into a master. Here, your deeply internalized knowledge is so profound, your intuition can safely and brilliantly transcend the system altogether. You don't break the rules, your intuition just expands them. And you know, this beautiful integration is heavily supported by the deep philosophical traditions of German cartomancy. Brilliant experts like Hajo Bonzoff and Leela Schwartz anchor the cards in Jungian psychology, seeing them as incredible mirrors for the self. They utilize strict structures like the archetypal hero's journeys and precise Lenormand house systems, not as cages to trap the reader, but as the very solid foundation that allows the intuition to soar safely. Structure ultimately serves the spirit. So how do we actively nurture this? Let's move to our final section, part 4, deepening your practice with daily tools for growth. Because knowledge really has to be lived to become wisdom. First, I want you to practice bridging. Take 2 cards and place them side by side. Try to weave a story solely from their shared visual elements. Do the figures face each other? Do they share the exact same color sky? Then create mind maps. Place a traditional keyword right in the center of a page and branch out with your own personal life experiences. Really connect that ancient archetype to your modern everyday life. Next, I want you to try this deeply intuitive meditation known as entering the card. Sit quietly. Imagine the card in front of you growing larger and larger until it becomes a doorway. Now, step through it. What is the temperature of the air on your skin? Pause. What do the surroundings smell like? Go ahead and speak to the figures you find there. This kind of active imagination transforms abstract, dry book knowledge into a felt, living, breathing memory right inside your body. And finally, we have the 2-step daily draw method. This perfectly trains your dual mind. When you draw your card for the day, open your journal and write down your intuitive feelings first. What catches your eye? What specific emotion rises up in your chest? Only after you have truly honored your intuition, then you open your guidebook. Look up and write down the traditional meaning. You'll begin to see exactly where your unique inner voice dances in pure harmony with ancient tradition and exactly where it uniquely diverges. The cards speak. Are you listening? As we conclude this beautiful explainer, I leave you with this final thought to gently ponder on your journey of self-discovery. True mastery isn't about choosing between your head and your heart. It is the sacred marriage of both. So, how will you nurture your roots so your wings can finally fly? Thank you so much for walking this path with me today on Witnesses to Happiness. May your intuition always be guided by wisdom.